Morning and good evening all around the globe. We are here live with the partner from BIG, Kai-Uwe Bergmann. And the lecture is hosted by Seoul National University, Department of Architecture, but it is open to the world. And this is the miracle of online life these days. This is the second in a series of lectures that we're hosting. The third will be Felipe Correa, the chair of University of Virginia, and that will be announced shortly. But this morning we are so privileged to have Kai-Uwe Bergmann joining us from New York. And let me just say a couple things and then we'll hand it over to Kai. About BIG, for those that might not know, and most of you do, but I'll just do a short little introduction just to let others that are coming in and maybe not know about BIG yet, and you will soon. BIG is a Copenhagen, New York, and London-based, Barcelona-based group of architects. They have those offices so far. They're designers, they're urbanists, and they're landscape professionals, and they're interior and product designers, researchers, and inventors. The office is currently involved in a large number of projects throughout Europe, North America, Asia, and the Middle East. BIG's architecture emerges out of a careful analysis of how contemporary life constantly evolves and changes due to the influence from multicultural exchange, global economic flows, and communication technologies that all together require new ways of architectural and urban organization. And Kai-Uwe Bergmann, who's a fellow at the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, is a partner at BIG, who works his architectural expertise to proposals around the globe, including work in North America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East. Kai-Uwe heads up BIG's business development, which currently has the office working in over 35 different countries. He also oversees BIG's urban scale projects and supports BIG's landscape projects. He's registered as an architect in the USA in 13 states and also in Canada. Kai-Uwe's most recent contributions include the resiliency plan. It's called Big U, to protect 10 million miles of Manhattan's coastline. Further projects include Brooklyn Queens Park, the Smithsonian Museum Master Plan, the Pittsburgh Master Plan, Miami Beach Square, and Zira Island Master Plans, just to name a few. He complements his professional work through previous teaching assignments at the University of Pennsylvania, IE University in Madrid, and his alma mater, the University of Virginia. And actually, just to give a little background, Kai, Uwe, and myself, we actually went to school together at the University of Virginia, and I want to, at the same time, want to kind of celebrate that we've known each other for 33 years, but also it reveals how old we are, you and me, Kai. We were just talking a little bit earlier of how we're going to be the old kind of intolerable people leading our offices or our schools, but we'll try not to be that. Kai-Uwe has always been youthful, always been energetic, always been inspirational, and so only myself, I'll be the old guy. In any case, thanks so much for joining. It's so great to see a friend from New York. And I'll just hand it over to you, Kai.
Thank you, John. And hello to everyone in Seoul and listening around the world. I would like to start right here with the title of today's talk, which is Form Giving. And maybe before delving into what that means, this is a picture of the University of Virginia, where both John and I went to school. And I think it has made an impression on both of us in our education and development as an architect. This was designed by a non-architect, a self-trained architect, Thomas Jefferson, who also wrote the Declaration of Independence and was the third president in the United States. He had traveled a lot through Europe and had read the 4 books of architecture by Palladio, and was so intrigued that in order for democracy to work, it needed the institutions to support that democracy. And so the idea of founding a university was integral to founding a country. And I think that's an incredible aspiration. And I would like to sort of start there, because in many ways, this is the place that has shaped both John and myself. And I feel like what I get to do every day at BIG is fulfill some of those aspirations that I learned at UVA. So I'm going to start with sort of talking about formgiving. And that is the Danish word for architecture, giving form to that which is not yet there. And I think all of us would agree that that could be one of the most truly difficult things to do, when you just have a white piece of paper and you're being asked to kind of think about what the future should be. You know, formgiving is actually the third iteration of kind of thoughts or concepts, manifestos that Bjarke and BIG have created, from Yes is More, Hot to Cold, and now Formgiving. So it is both a exhibition as well as a publication. The exhibition was actually just held last year at this time at the Danish Architecture Center, and started with a stair that basically collapsed time. As you moved up the stair, you can see that you went through first millions of years, then hundreds of thousands of years. Here, every step is 100 years. And then you could see on the wall all of the kind of technological as well as biological and sort of natural developments that were occurring during those times, and how mankind and humankind have kind of accelerated with certain technique. And then taking it all the way back to the basics, the sort of building block that we as architects oftentimes use. And the Lego, of course, is a building block invented in Denmark in the sort of 1940s, late 40s, early 50s. And we actually had sort of, you know, everyday people building our concepts out of Lego. So we collected about 20 of these models built by AFOLs, adult fans of Lego, who collect the stones and the bricks, and then build these visions. So it's a kind of feeling that if you can build the architecture, the designs out of a limited number of pieces, that's very much what an architect does as well. And that, you know, the creativity that a child has to create any kind of a world out of Lego is one that we also feel we should still keep and maintain as we become architects. And so the rest of the exhibition then shows kind of our present day or the last sort of 15 years of production. And you can see that in the great hall here of many projects that are either built under construction or on the verge of construction. So it gives you the kind of process and also the kind of technical knowledge and you know, everything from wall sections to plans to kind of see how these ideas have developed. And for us, each of these projects are a little bit of a step into the future of the way that we would like to live, work, and recreate. And then we descend from that great hall into the future by sort of looking at different aspects of how we work. So the idea of sensing, the idea of moving, and you know, perhaps moving from this planet to other planets. This is a project that we were kind of developing for the colonization of Mars, creating habitats both on Mars and on the moon. So William Gibson, who is a famous author, he wrote Neuromancer, and I'm sure John and myself were both reading it at about the same time. He said that the future is already here. It's all around us. It's just not evenly distributed. And what that means is, I think that we always think that the future is something that we don't know and that it's somehow, you know, a crystal ball. But in actuality, it is everywhere. And it's just that you have to sort of connect the dots and bring those futuristic steps together to create kind of a big leap. And so I'm going to go through a series of projects that were all within the Formgiving exhibition. You know, they're all contained kind of on this planet. And this planet has also a sort of finite amount of resources. So it's very also important to think of our kind of responsibility as we work in the different regions, the different countries and the different ecosystems, that we really start to think about how our work, how these projects and the people who use and inhabit the work also are thinking holistically about the planet. So we're going to start very small, 15 square meters. It's a small cabin in the woods north of New York City. This was a cabin that was, it's all within a small pallet, so it can be easily moved. This was the idea that, you know, many people live in cities. They have lost the connection to nature. How can we kind of recreate that connection to nature? And how can we be very, very light-footed so that we're not creating a huge kind of foundation and all the effort? This is something that can be built by two carpenters over a matter of a couple of months, and is also something that can be very affordable. So there's nothing absolutely revolutionary by this. It's an A-frame, something that, you know, all of us know, but it's just about how the elements are put together. It's a canvas kind of roof material that stretches out over the A-frame. There's a stove for heat. You have one window, one glazed for getting daylight into the space. And it creates an incredible kind of varied silhouette as you turn around the building. Inside is just very simple joinery. You have a kind of cork board for acoustics. There's a kitchen tucked in the corner, and then you have sleeping down below and sleeping above in the mezzanine. And you know, you have an electric pad that can sort of heat water. You also have a solar array that heats the shower water, and you take care of all of the kind of sewage and things right on the site with a sort of dry compact. And it's really to tell us that even in the smallest way, we can create, I think, a very inspirational space that really reconnects us to our surroundings and to nature. So we're going to move to 700 square meters. This gentleman came to Bjarke, and there's a big need in Copenhagen for student dormitories. There probably are thousands of students that don't have a place to sleep because they did not build enough bedrooms and dorms. So this gentleman still has his 22-year-old son living with him. And he came to us and he said, my brief is get my son out of my house. Because there should be more places that you know are affordable for students. So again, it's what we looked at here is nothing absolutely new or revolutionary. Many people have looked at shipping containers and thought about upcycling or recycling them. But I think in most of the projects that do upcycle shipping containers, there is one thing missing, which is the social dimension. And so we put a lot of effort into looking at how to arrange those shipping containers to create a space, a frame, where social life of the students could be kind of supported. And we also wanted to make sure that the buildings themselves were warmed or cooled by the seawater. We have a full photovoltaic roof again, and we want to also hook up to the wind energy. So we actually have co-developed this project with the client and are co-own it as well. So we wanted to kind of walk the talk instead of just saying, you know, let's find clients that can do and make our ideas. So this was the first prototype that was done. It was put together in a shipbuilding wharf in Poland, and then shipped over to Copenhagen. Here you see what the containers look like, and then how they've kind of assembled. It's all floating on a concrete ballast. So there's a whole story below water where the students can also spend time. And then it was tugged across the North Sea to where it now sits in Copenhagen. And it truly has one of the best locations in the city. And the most important thing is that this was built truly for 1/3 of the price of a typical bed in a dorm room, and built in half the time that a typical building would be built in. So the savings in terms of time and also materials allows a student to sleep here for about $600 a month, and you're in the center of Copenhagen. So the city of Copenhagen actually ordered 5 more, and now there's 72 dorm rooms of students living on these floating homes. And then we are getting interest from other cities that would also like to start using a lot of the sort of waterfront. You know, in Copenhagen, this is brownfield waterfront, so it's not yet developed. This is a great way to actually make those fallow areas actually full of life. And other cities are looking to do the same. So most important thing is having a happy client. And we got his son out of his house. So he's very, very, very happy. We're up to 1,200 square meters. This is a restaurant named Noma. It's very well known in Copenhagen for kind of reintroducing this kind of very seasonal foods which are available. So a lot of fish you can get in the sort of springtime, a lot of kind of meat in the fall, and then kind of roots in the winter. It's really amazing the way that Rene Redzepi, who is the chef, the main creator of Noma, has kind of brought cuisine to Scandinavia. And it's an old bunker. The long building, the gray concrete building, is a historic structure, so we couldn't really do much to it. We built about 10 different buildings around the bunker to create a kind of village, a food village, where you can walk up and go through the main entrance, and the entire first room is just the closet where you take off your coat, put your coat into the closet. And we wanted you to feel very kind of domestic and very kind of you're going to someone's home, and there's a fireplace. You can sit and stay warm on a winter's night. You can stay in the waiting area and have a view out to one of our projects. In the middle of the village is the hearth, or where the food is prepared. And you walk past the kitchen to get into the dining room. So it's a very intimate space. There are only 2 seatings a night, and then you can see what it looks like with people inside. There's also a sort of special room for private occasions off into another kind of building. And you know, and then he also has sort of seaweed farming, and he has oysters and things that are also around. So it's very much like a farm and also the sort of food village. This is the barbecue pit, which is also in the center, and then greenhouses where he grows a lot of the herbs that are used for the meals. So again, it's a very intimate scale, a lot of different materials, but ones that are very connected to the smell and the feeling that you have in the different rooms. We're just inching up to 1,400 square meters. This is a brand new project we just finished last year, and it's a art gallery. It was a competition that was to add a gallery to this old textile building. So the old textile building is there in the center of the image that you can see right there from the 1900s. And a wealthy family purchased the textile mill, and then, which is no longer, of course, doing that. So it's now converted very much into a museum. And instead of adding a gallery to the old building, we kind of looked at the site, and they have a lot of sculptures all around the landscape. You can see it peppered throughout the sort of southern part of the image. There was this one strange thing where people would take a loop on one side of the river, have to come back through the museum and go walk on the north side of the river. And it was very disconnected. And people sometimes got lost, or they couldn't find themselves again. And so we decided to use the gallery, the addition, as a link, as a bridge across the river, so that now there would be a loop that you could take and see all of the sculptures. And then the building itself was meant to be both a gallery, a bridge, and a piece of sculpture, so that it really has this kind of, it does so many different things, and that people can connect with the building in those kind of different needs, and also where they see it from different parts of the site. And it looks complex, but actually it is made up of all straight pieces that you can see here that are just sort of flipped the width of the material itself to kind of create this illusion of a twist. And also on the inside, you can see that these are all straight pieces of wood that have been sort of that have been fanned out. We've integrated the air movement in the top and the bottom of the wall. And that creates this kind of very large 3-story kind of gallery space at one end, and then a flatter, a single-story space on the other end. And then from the bridge, you have this connection, visual connection back to the old mill as well. So, this does require a little bit of gymnastics. So this is this sort of the frame and the truss that has been created to kind of allow for that twist to occur. It's a building that really has been quite successful for the Kistefos Museum, and a lot of people are traveling to this small area in north of Oslo to see the building. And here you can see it in relationship to the old mill. So we're jumping up now to 7,000 square meters. And this is in Copenhagen. It's in the northwest part of Copenhagen. It's really just a neighborhood, like a normal neighborhood with lots of residential and a few shops. It's really where two street grids come together. So it's a kind of a pie-shaped site. And in many cases, these sites are kind of sometimes really hard to develop because people don't quite know how to deal with the pie shape. And it was supposed to, it's built as affordable housing. So there are a couple of companies, developers in Denmark that specialize in affordable housing. And affordable housing is always what you typically find on the left, which is standardized, usually stacked, rectilinear, and everything is super hyper efficient. It creates a certain monotony, and every city has these kinds of buildings. We wanted to see if we could create a more generous, a more organic, and a more kind of interesting urbanistically kind of building. and still build affordably. So we built in prefabricated units in a brick module. These spaces are sort of stacked, as you can see here. And then we can sort of curve the brick modules to take advantage of the pie-shaped site and create different kind of landscapes, a sort of forecourt and a backyard, and a little bit more interesting, because typically all of the social housing is the same as the left building. And it's, you know, where you live is kind of monotonous. And we wanted to create this kind of, you know, you start living within these different cubes. And sometimes you have two, sometimes you have three, depending on how many bedrooms you have. We push some of the storefronts back to create balconies. You know, the balcony is now, during COVID, of course, something that is extremely cherished by everyone, to be able to get outside and have some fresh air. And you can see how generous the space is right here. This is the space that is created in between the two bricks, and you step up into the bedrooms on the left and the right, and you can see the height. This is one of our partners, Kat Huang, that is standing inside this affordable housing project, and it really has this graciousness of space. And then the bedrooms are much more intimate, smaller. You can see, you know, all the concrete is exposed, the wiring is exposed, so there's a lot of cost-cutting measures in these types of housing, but you don't really feel it. You truly feel that there's a lot of care taken in this project. There's also a porosity, so people on the street, it doesn't come like a wall. There's some of the bricks that are blown out so that people can actually move from one side to the other. And then, you know, I think one of the nicest things is just that balcony life of being and hanging out and being a part of that community of people who live there. So 77,000 square meters is also a housing project, but now we've skipped over the pond to New York. This is the project that actually brought us here. I came about 10 years ago, and it's the FAIA project. So this is on the west side of Manhattan. It's a full city block. It's very close to Central Park that you can see there in the center. And, you know, New York is very much a city of skyscrapers. And you have these sort of towers on podiums. And, you know, Copenhagen, where we come from, is very much made up of courtyards. So what do you get when you combine sort of the New York typology with a European Copenhagen one? You get a court scraper. So basically you get both a skyscraper and a courtyard quality all in one. And that's, you know, we haven't seen that type of residential project here in America. We've done a lot of courtyard buildings in Europe. So this was kind of our way of kind of reintroducing the typology. It's been in New York, but maybe like 80 to 100 years ago. And, you know, it's also looking at if Central Park is a huge green lung to the city at that scale, then, you know, what Central Park is to the city, our courtyard is to the building. And they're both proportioned the exact same. And then even in the park, you have different qualities. You have a meadow, there's a fountain, there's, you know, granite kind of natural stones that you can boulder over. So there's also a lot of similar landscaping and trees from Central Park brought right here into this park, which is really nice to have this amenity in the middle of New York. You're living in the city of New York, and you have this view in the center of Hell's Kitchen, which is the neighborhood that this building is in, and you hear, you know, birds chirping on a Sunday morning. So this was finished in 2016, and really was our first completed building in North America. So I'm sitting in New York, thanks to actually doing this building and coming here. 410,000 square meters. So we're getting up to a fairly large scale. We're going to jump back to Copenhagen. This is also a project that finished last October, a year ago, and is a power plant. So it's a waste to energy plant that has a ski slope on top of it, which is a very strange thing to sort of suggest. But you know, our feeling is that most power plants that you see around the world, they're these large gray areas that no one wants to live around, and they are most often so uninteresting. And what we wanted to do was to create basically the world's funnest, most interesting, cleanest, most efficient power plant that the world has ever seen. And the client also wanted to do something that really demonstrated to the people of Copenhagen that you know, living sustainably, living and finding ways to use resources and to both recycle but also to burn for energy was something that everyone could understand. And Copenhagen will actually be carbon neutral by 2025, 5 years from now. And we also thought about really bringing a new biodiversity back into the city. So, you know, the planting of trees and a lot of the sort of flowers and natural brushes were really important to allow for you to kind of remap large swaths of otherwise. This is what the power plant, this one is going to replace everything that you see there. So they'll slowly tear down that power plant, which was built about 60 years ago. And our power plant is producing the same amount of energy as that over there. So people are, of course, enjoying this incredible amenity of skiing, you know, weekly, daily. You can get a year pass and enjoy it. And then underneath all of that, you have the actual power plant. Just, you know, what you have. There's the trash that comes in every day. It gets burned and incinerated in the incinerator. And then, you know, the world isn't any the wiser of like actually what this plant does for everyone. And everyone is there to kind of enjoy the life quality that this brings. And it becomes kind of a new landmark for the city to the same degree that that the Little Mermaid is for Copenhagen. 600,000 square meters. So we are in California. This is a former Air Force base, and it's where Google has its headquarters. So we were asked, along with Thomas Heatherwick, to create a master plan for Google. This is now about 8 years ago. And we have now been involved in 8 projects, 2 that are also happening, but in Europe. And over this course of time, some of those projects are with Thomas Heatherwick, others are just big by themselves. You can see here, this is the Charleston East campus. It is going to be the largest photovoltaic roof for a private building in North America. These are shingled, so it's a new type of PV that's actually flexible, and you can see that it's starting to really finish up. This is the quality inside right now in the construction site, and you know, it's to create a kind of ecosystem for the Googlers, where they work in sort of scrums of 6 to 8 to 12 people working on a project. There are at least 3,000 people working in this one building. And we open up the kind of terracing to allow for these stairs that take you up to the working floor. Down below, you have a whole kind of bazaar of cafes and restaurants and support spaces, the bathrooms, everything, the meeting rooms are all on the floor below. And then you move up to the floor where all the work takes place. The campus was to be very kind of inviting for also the community. So it's not like the Apple campus where only Apple people are allowed to kind of pop in and out of the building. Here, even everyday residents are allowed to come in and walk through. These are 3 additional buildings that are just a stone throw away from Charleston East. So these are also under construction and will be finished in the next 2 years. And then you can see here, same idea of a lot of stairwells, a lot of movement up and down to the top. And then this is London. So this is a landscraper. This is 8,000 Googlers all working in the same building. And we wanted to kind of take a lot of the natural daylight and sort of generous spaces, a lot of the CLT that you can see here in the facade and also on the balconies, and just having this very grand space. So these are the facade elements that have been manufactured and are now getting delivered to the site. 710,000 square meters. This is in Tokyo. We have been working for 2 years now with Toyota to reimagine Toyota, going from just producing cars to actually thinking of them as a kind of autonomous and robotic kind of laboratory where they can test out their own products, but also the products of others. And this is taking a former factory that produces cars or produced cars and morphing it into now a kind of test bed, a village for these autonomous uses. So I'm going to let Bjarke take over.
So let me quickly take you through our thinking as we designed the master plan with Akio and his team. So basically today the typical street is a mess with everything and nothing everywhere. So we started by splitting the typical street into 3 separate forms of mobility. The first type is private transportation, and every vehicle is autonomous with 0 emissions, and street trees create the necessary distinction between people and vehicles. The second type would be an urban promenade shared by pedestrians and slower personal mobility. And the final type of street would be a linear park with paths for pedestrians only. So imagine walking from one part of town to the other, moving only through a park. So these 3 types of streets will then weave together into a woven grid of 3 by 3 city blocks, each framing a local park or courtyard. This not only creates a more serene living environment, but also provides a wide variety of intersections between various kinds of users, between humans and animals and vehicles and even robots. This also helps accelerate Toyota's testing of autonomy and smart city infrastructure. So this is one of the city's typical blocks. The roofs are clad in photovoltaic tiles to power the city. All of the buildings are made primarily out of carbon neutral wood, and they combine the traditional craft of Japanese wood joinery with new robotic production methods. In a way, we can preserve and evolve the old traditions through new technology. And each block is home to a mix of spaces for living and working and play. Below ground, we find the entire infrastructure of the city, including its hydrogen power storage and water filtration systems. A network for the autonomous delivery of goods also takes place underground and connects directly to the buildings above. Homes in the woven city will serve as test sites for new technology, such as in-home robotics to assist with daily life. So these smart homes will take advantage of full connectivity using sensor-based AI to do things automatically, like restocking your fridge or taking out your trash, or even taking care of how course, the best part is that these homes will have spectacular views of Mount Fuji. So if we go back on the ground, a major piece of the puzzle in the whole city is the Toyota e-pallet, an autonomous vehicle that will serve for shared transportation and mobile retail. It is also going to make deliveries to the research and development labs, which rides above the central plaza. And the e-pallets will also help create flexible programming in the central plaza, making the plaza the rebirth of the marketplace, the town square, or even the fairground. So in an age when technology, social media, and online retail is replacing and eliminating our natural meeting places, the Woven City will explore ways to stimulate human interaction in the urban space. After all, human connectivity is the kind of connectivity that triggers well-being and happiness, productivity, and innovation. So here you have it, listed at the base of Mount Fuji, the Toyota Woven City. Thank you.
So what Bjarke just presented is really how a company at the scale of Toyota is pivoting from a purely manufacturing company to now integrating all kinds of different technologies and delivery systems, and taking the knowledge that they have in producing cars into a whole host of different things. So they will now end up becoming developers of their former factories. And so the main concept of what Bjarke was presenting is this idea that you have vehicular roads, shared mobility roads, and pedestrian pathways. And that the street grid that we all know from many different cities, especially here in New York, you would prioritize vehicular in blue, the shared in pink, and then the pedestrian in yellow, and that you would basically be able to connect to every single site here by one of those modes of transportation. And then if you can kind of increase that or enlarge that, you can see how that could then also be morphed to allow for different scales of buildings, different footprints of buildings. And we are actually developing that first phase of 9 building sites in the lower south corner of the project. And then this again is to kind of reinforce the home building that is in Japan as well, and the CNC and kind of laser technologies that are reinvigorating the wood carpentry business and industry. So this is now currently in SD, and we actually have our partner Leon Roast and a couple of other bigsters working from Tokyo on this project as we speak. 1 million square meters, the scale of the city of New York. This is New York in the 1930s. Notice how the waterfront is entirely industrial. No one really wanted to live on the waterfront at this point in time because it was full of kind of trucks and boats and workers. It was a working waterfront. And maybe one of the most exciting things for New York City in the last 15 to 20 years has been how the working waterfront has completely transformed into a recreation and kind of accessible waterfront. It's also reinvigorated the entire kind of real estate sector along that waterfront. So when Sandy hit about 8 years ago and knocked out the power for half the city and caused about $20 billion of damage, it was kind of a wake-up moment. And it was kind of realizing that as a coastal city, sea level rise and future storm events would really, really impact that investment in the coastal edge. So everything in gray that you see there is what was flooded during Sandy. And there was a competition called Rebuild by Design. And we came up with the concept called the Big U, what you see there in blue, to kind of protect the city against flooding. But instead of just having engineers engineer a gray wall against flooding, as so often happens, we wanted to think about how people and the kind of activities that people enjoy could be integrated into the infrastructure. We call this social infrastructure. And so our concept was a kind of a flood management system that disappears into kind of parks and into urban furniture, into artworks. So you wouldn't even actually see the kind of gray infrastructure of protecting because you were enjoying the kind of new life that was kind of blossoming out of it. You'll also notice that there's a bike lane all along it. So imagine that there's a new bike lane around the entire edge of the city that doesn't ever cross a single street. So kind of a protected 10-mile long path. And then, you know, here's on the west side where it's very kind of pinched, you have a kind of urban furniture that then protects you against those storm events. I'm very happy to say that the first 2.5 miles of the 10 miles, 1/4 of it is fully funded and will start construction in a matter of weeks. So by 2026, my daughter, who will be 7 years old, will be able to enjoy the first 2.5 miles of park. 196 million square meters. We're now talking a kind of fairly large scale. By 2050, 90% of the world's largest cities, like New York, will be exposed to rising seas, according to UN Habitat. So we really need to start thinking about how can we learn from existing systems and existing communities, such as, you know, from Indonesia, where they build on stilts against the sort of tidal waters, or in Mexico and many other places. How can we learn structures and kind of newer typologies, also from natural systems of water collection, of passive kind of evaporation, storage as well, and to be sort of inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN to kind of come up with an idea for the climate refugees that we expect coming from the areas where the coastal regions will be hit hardest. So people will be having to move away from living on the water. And if you also think about the South Pacific Islanders, there are hundreds of thousands of people that will literally lose their land to rising seawater. And when you consider the kind of age groups of sort of elderly all the way to children, and you're looking for what kind of a system can be created to allow for there to be kind of a habitat that takes into consideration all of the things that we need, from food to waste management, to you know, also work, and how we kind of can create an ecosystem that is reliant and circular, then we are able to sort of deal with these issues. So we're looking at, you know, how much energy is needed by a person per day is 30 kilowatt hours. Where can that energy be actually captured or created? How much fresh water? 600 liters per day per person. How can we make sure that there's clean drinking water? How do we deal with waste? How do we deal with food production? And so we have looked at, if you take the urban rigor project I showed earlier and just kind of sort of supersized it, this is where we now have a kind of a city of really 60,000 people that use vertical farming, they use aeroponics, they have ocean farming of oysters and seaweed, and we're sort of creating artificial reefs so that you can think of it as an island that becomes a cluster, that becomes an archipelago. And there are about 300 residents that live within that island. And then it sort of moves up to the scale that you see here. And when you compare that to sort of Manhattan, you can see how this can kind of grow to take on those needs of climate refugees. And this is really something that I think we do need to start thinking. This isn't the answer. This is not a bulletproof way of doing it. You can create the first prototype. Where that will be, whether it is in Africa, in the Middle East, or in Asia, is yet to be seen. And we're looking for those sites of where to sort of locate this. This is from last year, last October, at the World Urban Forum, where the idea was presented and also is very much supported by the UN. So we've now just gone through a series of projects all around the globe at different scales to show you kind of how we can find little bits of the future. But there's one place I want to take you still, and that's space. We have been working with a 3D printing company out of Texas called Icon. This is, you can see there's on the site, they are able to print houses, and they have been really at the forefront of sort of 3D printing in America. They 3D printed the first house in America, and they're now printing larger multifamily scale projects. So Icon and Big were invited by NASA to look at creating a habitat with 3D printing technology on the moon. And the moon, in 2009, it was confirmed that there is water on the moon, and that water resource is needed in order for life to actually be able to exist, because you're not going to be shipping water up to astronauts. So how do you use 3D printing technology to create the sort of shielded from radiation habitat, and how do you deal with all of the different kind of pressures that you will find on the moon? So we developed a series of different living and working modules that you can see here. You can see the 3D printer is actually printing one of those circular kind of habitats right there. And here's the airlock that allows you to sort of pop in and out of the habitat. So this was just presented. We're very excited. The NASA actually has this program to start having astronauts moving and testing the ability to actually create a habitat on the moon. It's something that they really would like to actually see happening by the 2030s. Just to kind of give you a little overlook of the different kind of layers of that habitat, and then kind of what that looks. We're using the regolith on the moon as the printing material, and we're also filling that structure with regolith to kind of give it that permanence. So we're currently living on this planet, and if everyone were to kind of live as us, meaning you in Seoul and we here in New York, we would actually need almost 2 Earth's resources to continue living the way that we do. And we don't have 2 Earths. So we really have to learn how to work within the resources that we have. And we also need to understand that we may need to look at other planetary places to also test and see if life can exist elsewhere. So that wraps it up. And thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you so much, Kai. Whew, you can hear all the silent clapping on the muted mics. And all the silent clapping across YouTube as well. Oh, yes, yes. And we have a fan too. Well, thank you. Well, thank you for that lecture. And I'm wondering if from our side, we can turn on the screen so we can see us. Yes, thank you so much. So many questions, and all of them are nice. And you asked me, Kai, to challenge you. So I have one mean question.
Sure, go for it.
And then I'll ask some of the professors to ask questions, and then some from the audience as well. So I'll actually preface it with something very nice. Actually, there's always a social dimension to your projects, and this is great. But then also big. They talk the talk, but they also walk the walk. When our students visited your office, it was such a great environment. And earlier on today, before we started live streaming, Kai-Uwe actually said he doesn't ask his employees to work really, really late hours and things like this. So not only are you creating social projects, you're also creating an environment within the workspace. So a lot of architects, they talk the talk, but then actually they can be quite, let's say, oppressive in the way they practice. So that's the nice part of the question. The second part, though, is I think maybe to do with media image, and in this whole kind of realm of the starchitect. And there's a sort of notoriety, I would say, of your office. The principals, you included, when we meet Bjarke, when we meet you, you're so accessible and so nice. But there's a whole kind of buzz around the office of Big being sort of rock stars, and the media calls you starchitects. And then we see images of you guys at parties, and you're having champagne, and you're let's say partying with the rich and famous. But at the same time, your projects are actually very egalitarian. So there's almost a kind of, we don't always want to expect people that are doing socially just and environmentally friendly architecture to be sort of quiet and hidden. You guys are, we have that expectation, and it might not be good for the profession, actually. And you guys are sort of blowing that up. You guys are very visible. Your marketing engine, which I think maybe you head up, is like a well-tuned machine. Do you see any dichotomy here, between the view of this two-pronged view of Big, one as an architect for the people, and then another view of it as a kind of elitist sort of a celebrity firm?
I mean, it's not the first time I've been asked that question. And I would just say that I hope that people actually experience the work and experience us as people and make opinions based on direct experience. I often feel that the biggest critics and those folks that may have very warped views of who and what we do and what our interests are have actually never stepped a foot into a single big project, and don't actually understand what the thoughts that are behind it. So I do feel that it's very easy to criticize in our current world, especially through social media, and everyone does have very strong opinions about things, and people should have opinions, and people should also be open and able to say what they feel. I do wish that it at times is a little bit more informed, and a little bit more curious, so that you don't just see a image and then make a ton of associations with that image. Really, then start, if you're curious enough, ask questions. Why was this image taken, or how did that come to be, and what really happened? And the world is very complex, and I also feel that there's a lot of layers, and there's a lot of ways to approach the profession of design, and there isn't one way to do something. And that's what I'm also hoping to get across. We get criticized for doing the floating city project because there are certain people that think that's all we're trying to say, is that this project will save humanity. It is not meant to be that. It is meant to be and challenge the profession and ourselves as that amphibious architecture actually is a very interesting field. And there are communities that have already, built floating architecture. Sausalito is one of my favorite places in California, and that's entirely floating. And why is it that we can't look at a variety of solutions and not get caught up in the way that the solution was presented? Because in order to get anything done in life, you really have to convince a lot of people. And you have to convince the client, you have to convince the municipalities, the agencies, the regulations. If you were to just, keep your mouth shut and just say nothing, you would end up doing a lot of the things that have, as they've always been done. Because to challenge convention, to wish to demonstrate new ways of living or working, you are challenging the very profession, the very construction techniques, contractors, and that takes a lot of effort. And so I would say to your comment, everyone should be able to dish out whatever they feel, but all I ask is that it is informed, critical thinking, based on some intelligence and some facts, and then let's have a conversation.
I think that's a great answer, and in a way, the question was meant to bait you to talk about these things, and I think that's great. I think one of the emblematic projects for me is the waste recycling plant, the power plant that was turned into a ski slope, because why not make something like that that's so utilitarian, make it also fantastical as well? Because that sort of symbolic role of it is what people gets interested. You didn't have to put that smokestack on there that blows steam. The steam, of course, is 100% clean, but that is a symbolic part of the project, and it makes people interested. So in a way, a lot of sustainable architecture, I think, doesn't, to lack of a better word, advertise its state. But you guys are very good at not only making the sustainable architecture, but also designing the symbolic role of it, how we can understand it through these kind of things. So I really appreciate that. Could we have a question from Professor Chun Choi?
Yes, hi. So it's very nice to meet you, Kai, online, and thank you so much for restoring my pride in our profession. Has this privilege to be able to shape the future. And as you mentioned in the very beginning of the lecture, future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. And I completely agree. And so often this idea of future has become a capital that is distributed to the very few in an unequal amount. I mean, and what we have to do as architects is really try in our best ability to restore some form of equity when it comes to shaping the future. And my question is really about your housing projects, which are incredible, and how such high quality environment, living arrangements can be provided for social housing in Copenhagen, in Scandinavia. But then when your housing projects in the States are shown, they're mostly private and for high income families. And I would like to hear how your experience has differed in working on social housing projects in Denmark as opposed to working on private housing projects in New York, and how your attitude may change, because the outcome are equally outstanding, but then the people that live there tend to be very different, I imagine. And how
It's a societal question that you're asking, because different societies have different ways of building affordable housing. In Denmark, the affordable housing is typically entirely built as a single building structure with only affordable units. I think that in America, that approach was kind of frowned upon after the sort of 60s and 70s, because you would end up with ghettos or slums. And we all remember the pictures of Pruitt-Igoe in St. Louis, where the buildings were torn down after 30 years of use. So it's you wouldn't know it, but the FAIA project that I showed you, 20% of those units are affordable. And you can live in the FAIA project for as little as $600 a month for a studio apartment in the center of New York. And John Hong will be able to tell you that a studio apartment in New York would typically be about $2,500 a month. So it's close to 1/5 of the cost. And we have several projects. We're just finishing a project in Harlem that is 70% market and 30% affordable. And again, it's typically about 1/3 or 1/4 of the typical market rate costs. So it is that affordable housing, at least in New York, it's different from city or state to state, but you don't always know that the affordable units are actually also within the project. And the guidelines are such that you can also not make the affordable units all north facing, or you have to spread them out, and they have to have the same qualities of materials and light as the other units. So those
are mandated by regulations.
It's mandated by regulations, and it's all developers know this. And in New York, at least, from one mayor to the next, that has gone from 20% of private developments to 30%, which I think creates, I would say, a more interesting city, because then you don't look at a building and say, that's the social housing project. It's more mosaic.
Completely agree.
Well, excellent.
You're on mute, I think, John.
Did you want to follow up with that, June?
No, I'm very happy with the answer. I hope more of this happens in Seoul as well, in Korea.
That's right. The kind of mixed use between affordable and market housing, I think it's important. That's right. And the architecture that you're putting together, it's almost an aggregation. It's always been, from the smallest scale to the largest scale, it's a kind of aggregation strategy. And I think that's perfect to sort of fill in with this mixed use. Professor,
one last thing, actually, Chun.
Yeah.
BIG has built around 250 affordable units a year for the last 5 years.
Wow.
In projects around the world. So, that to us is also a very important aspect of being an architect, is that you're not an architect to the 1%, but to truly the 100% or 99%. It is very important, and I hoped through the projects that I showed tonight that you could see that there is a range of budgets and of construction costs.
Yes, that's great. Our school, by the way, Kai-Uwe, we're both an architecture and an architectural engineering program, and both are merged together. And it's interesting that the work of BIG is also sort of multidimensional in that way, and cross-disciplinary. So we do have a question from Professor Thomas Kang. He's actually in the architectural engineering department.
Thanks for your presentation. I was very impressed by a ton of fascinating projects, and pretty much envying, the fact that you actually did a lot of projects all over the world. And among those, I have a comment on the Manhattan project, because Manhattan is kind of very similar to the environment of Seoul. They are a bit conservative, and they have a lot of box-shaped high-rise buildings, and it's very congested area. And you actually are doing right now very unique, irregularly shaped building project. And I think in Seoul, we got to pursue that kind of a project more, not just touching the facade attachment, but like whole shape and appearance. So, but oftentimes, if you have a very unique project, irregular shaped building, there are a lot of argument about the safety, like the structure safety, and also some architectural debate. Like, I mean, it's not really in line with the other buildings, something like that. So we gotta fight very hard against those resistance. And
Yes.
Maybe it's a different in New York and Seoul City, but what would be the strategy that we can?
I don't think it is that that different between the cities, and it's very funny. The VIA project, which is the shape of a mountain, right? Very thick base and a very small top. And when that building was first shown as a rendering, there were very, very intelligent people that said that that building is structurally unsound. And you have to start thinking, because when you build a skyscraper that is skinny and is as thick at the top as it is at the bottom, it's very much like a domino stone. And what happens when you blow on the domino stone at the top? It falls down, because the wind forces at the top of a skyscraper are so strong that everything in the structure has to accommodate the wind forces at the very top of the building. So the steel rebar is excessive. The core is very, very thick. When you build a building like the VIA building, you can use less rebar in the top of the building because it has very little wind resistance. You can use a shallower core because, again, you don't need the same rigidness. So very intelligent people could not make the leap structurally that actually the building, the shape of a mountain, is the most structurally sound structure on the planet. Because when have you seen a mountain move? Never. And when you can say it in those simplistic sort of ways and say, show me a mountain, show me a domino stone, now blow. That brings it to a point that every single human should be able to understand that, wow, we should be building a lot more buildings in the shape of mountains than we are. And there's this great Korean architect from the 60s and 70s that was building a lot of mountains and was doing resorts and hotels and structures all over Korea. The name is escaping me. I'm hoping someone can remember. I looked at his work when I was a student because I was very impressed. So I know Korea in its history has had very strong visionary people showing different ways of living and of being. And then, of course, in today's Korea, I think you have to be very, you have to see that people are able to change their opinions and people are willing to take big risks, like the river that has been opened to the air and the traffic has been taken out. That is a project that is resonating around the world. There are cities that want to do the same thing as Seoul has done. You just have to find those kinds of buildings or ideas. And like John, I would say again, you have to make incredibly strong presentations. You have to make really convincing material, because you're going up against so much friction of, well, that's not how we do things. And maybe that's viewed as arrogant, or maybe that's viewed as thick-headed or stubborn or whatever, but that's what it takes to actually get some of these things done.
That's so great to hear about the role of tenacity, actually. Yes. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Thomas.
No, I mean, yeah, you're right. Actually, we need to have a courage to accomplish, that kind of, ambitious projects. Actually, it's not an easy task.
No.
That's right. Maybe
That's why
we
I have
need
so much gray hair.
Maybe we need to move mountains too.
Yeah.
You said mountains can't be moved. Love can move mountains. That's what they say anyway. Sorry to be a little cheesy. Professor Hangman Zhou, are you online right now? He might not be here online. Or are there? Oh, there he is. We'll wait for him to turn on his camera. Yes, hello. Can you share a question or comment with us? Oh, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, great.
Yes. Thank you for your lecture, and then I'm very impressed of many projects and ideas. My question is very simple. Some of BIG's projects has very different ideas and different visions. How you guys, how confident are you in your visions and ideas, such as like Google projects or Toyota projects? You're suggesting some new kind of lifestyles and all kind of new systems. But
yes.
as an architect, it's really hard to be very confident of my ideas. And yes,
I think that you should know that the architect is only half the equation. Many of these projects, you have to have the client on the other side that is challenging you and is pushing you maybe into some space that you have no idea about. And Google is a great example. Larry Page, one of the founders, he selected 3 architects to do the Google headquarters. And each time he selected an architect, it was one architect. And then it never worked out. So 3 times they had designs, and after a few years, they said no. And then when he interviewed for the 4th time, he came to the selection where Thomas Heatherwick and Bjarke Ingels were sitting in the room. And he said, listen, I want you guys to work together, because the last 3 times I had an architect telling me what they wanted my building to be. And what I want you guys to do is to listen to me. What is the building that I want to be? And if there's 2 of you, you're more likely to listen than if there's 1 of you. Then you're shouting what you want. And he said that in engineering, when there's a problem in a software engineer, they stick 10 software engineers into a room and they collectively come up with a solution. And there's no like major author or like one idea is better than the other. They work together. And he felt that the architecture profession needed a little bit more of the software engineering kind of hacking and working together to develop ideas. And do you know how hard it is to get 2 architects to work together? And then also, if you look at the Google project, and if I were to say, what do you think is Thomas Heatherwick's and what do you think is Big? It's nearly impossible, because in one of the buildings we said, okay, Big will do the big frame, and Thomas Heatherwick will do the interiors and the kind of space. And then on the next building we'll flip it. Heatherwick will do the kind of big idea picture and the big structure, and then Big will do. So we also learn to actually work together with very strong, opinionated, and great designers. So I think we couldn't have come up with Google by ourselves. Mm-hmm. It is very much when you get that combination of clients and collaborators and the teamwork dimension that allows that to happen.
Understood. Well, one more question is that you're from getting bigger and bigger, and then you said that you have 35 branches all over the world.
No, 35 countries we're working in.
Yeah. 35 countries anyway, and then so many projects and so many maybe designers, and then but the project seems like in line with some styles and ideas. And then who's the driving kind of leading all those things? I want to know the decision making structures and processes in your firm.
Yeah, so it is very much Bjarke Engel's group. Bjarke is involved in all projects. He has managed to scale with the work. He learned from one of the best. He worked at OMA for 3 years, and in the time that he worked with OMA was maybe 40 or 50 people when he was working in Rotterdam. And then they started splitting and having offices in Hong Kong and US and in the Middle East. And he could see when Rem was traveling and seeing people and how Rem ended up working. And I think that, Bjarke saw, but then he also changed many things that he wanted to do himself. And Bjarke's, I think, one of the true talents is trusting and empowering people. So, we are 17 partners together with Bjarke. That's a lot of partners for a company. And, the trust and the quality of the thinking of all of us is very, very, it's very unique. I have not experienced this anywhere else. And then the collective genius of the 600 architects and people working at Big. So also, John, in the last 4 years, we created a landscape group. We have an engineering group. We have interiors planners, and that has allowed us to approach things very holistically. So we can go inside, outside. We can go macro scale, micro scale, and design products. It's a very kind of privileged place to be.
Understood. But every firm tries to kind of do like that, but only 1 or 2 kind of successful. But I really want to know the kind of company's secret. But anyway, thank you for your answer.
Of course.
Yeah, back to you, John.
Yes. Basically, Professor Hangman wants to create a global office, I can tell. Well, this is great insight, and thank you for sharing. And really, it's about teamwork. I think that's what you're saying, Kai-Uwe. The way you call people that work in your firm, but also work with your firm, bigsters. It's kind of cute, but it's also they're all part of the team. Is there any questions from our academic community here on Zoom? Ayan Lee, I noticed you turned on your camera. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you so much for the really interesting lecture. I am the freshman of the SNU Department of Architecture. When I heard the title of this lecture, Formgiving, Giving Form to the Future, I was really excited. As a student who dreams of becoming an astro architect, the final section was really interesting. I'm so happy that it's not about the future story, but it's about really now. Architecture on Mars or Moon, not Earth, has really different building environment. technology is much more important, and we have to think over the material and feasibility, psychological state of astronauts. So my question is a little bit comprehensive. I really appreciate if you give me some advices that what kind of mindset I should have about architecture and what studies and experiences I have to do.
That's a great question. I like it because you, in a way, already are interested in potentially a profession that does not yet exist, Astra architect. But I assure you, I can tell you, it will exist. And it will be a very exciting place to be. Many people ask me, why on earth are we looking at the moon and Mars for habitation when we have so many problems here on this planet? And my answer to that is that we can potentially actually learn so much by building a habitation on the moon or Mars, because we have to deal with circular economy. We have to deal with retention of water. We have to deal with minimum use of energy in order to survive in those environments. And if we are able to figure it out in the next 20, 30 years on how to actually do it in those environments, we will be able to bring all of the knowledge that we will be learning and bringing them to projects and to cities and to places here on Earth. It is the hardest thing to frame the kind of goal that you have, or to frame the thinking that you're trying to take care of. And by going to these places, we have a goal, we have a framework of issues that need to be resolved, and you can then use the experience of engineers and of specialists and astrophysicists to figure stuff out. It's so much about framing the question that you want answered. And we seem to have problems with that here on Earth when we're trying to actually deal with issues of cities and energy use and such. So my recommendation to you is to open your mind as to where you would work. Maybe you should look at those private rocket companies like Blue Origin or SpaceX, because they're so serious about going to the space, and they are already hiring architects. My first job, John, I'm not sure if you remember this, but when John and I graduated from college in 1991, there was a recession going on, not as bad as there is now, but there was no work for architects. John was very lucky. He went to New York and he worked for an architect there, but it was rare. There were many people in our class that were not able to find their first architecture job. I ended up actually looking at art, and I worked for an artist, a glassblower, for 3 years. And some people would say that that is outside of architecture and that I must have lost 3 years of my life. And I would say absolutely not. That artist and the experimentation that he was doing with glass is something that I still use to this very day. And if you haven't noticed, every single building has glass in it. So it's like when you work for a glass artist, you start to look at glass not as a thin sheet of clear, transparent material. you actually know what shapes the glass can take, and you know what colors it could be. So your mind is much more open to what glass could be. And I think if you end up thinking about how you can go into a profession that takes your architectural education and then expands upon it, no matter how much you end up doing there, you can take all of that experience back into architecture if you want to then find a traditional job.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Kai. Well, one thing that's dawning on me is that that you also teach, and I can see you as a very great teacher. The one thing that I always thought of you as, Kai, was always a student of the world, and I think that this goes to show you that teaching and being a student at the same time is actually a way to work. You're always learning, and you're always trying to synthesize things and seeing the relationships between things. So thank you for that insight. We have a question from one of our graduate students, Unsa.
Okay. Hi. First of all, thank you so much for a very inspiring lecture. I really enjoyed it. I want to ask you more about the challenges or struggles of the form giving itself. I mean, in terms of the design. I came up with this question when I on the 7,000 square meter project that remember that the diagram which spreads apart and then
the housing
in between.
Yes.
Seeing that, I came up with this question of so what are the challenges that on making form? I mean, you talked about these social dimensions that those forms can give, and what are the challenges on it? What are the struggles on it? For example, in Korea situations, there are so many regulations on these heights and those gross floor areas and something like that. And I think that's not only the case in Korea, but also some in other really dense Asian countries as well. So those regulations that predetermines these designs, or this can even be something about budget. So
let's start with regulations. Regulations are there because they're there for a reason, and they also serve a very important purpose. Typically, it's because it's life safety issues. But sometimes regulations actually are outdated. Sometimes regulations are not moving with the times and with the technology. And you have to always think of creativity. You can be creative on a plan. You can be creative in a contract. You can be creative in a regulatory investigation. We approach every part of design and of the administration of that design as a creative opportunity. If we design something that, we designed the mountain dwellings in Copenhagen, and it is 80 units of residential that are also built like a mountain. And these 80 units, they needed 8 elevators to go up to the different floors. The elevators would be going up, right? Just like a normal elevator. And when the client saw that, he was like, are you crazy? I'm not going to pay for 8 elevators for 80 units. That's crazy. But then we came up with, well, if that's the problem, why don't we use an elevator like in Switzerland that goes up the mountain in a diagonal, right? We would be able to go to all 80 apartments with one elevator. And we came back and we explained it to the client. And we said, you could do this with one elevator. You just have to buy the elevator in Switzerland, not in Denmark. And imagine how crazy the Swiss company was when we called them up and said, we'd like to order an elevator. And then they were like, where? In Denmark. yeah, but there's no mountains in Denmark. And then we're building a mountain. And the Swiss company was so excited to be delivering a elevator to Denmark that the guy who owned the company actually had to come and see it himself, because he was so proud that he was actually delivering his product to so far north. And then the 80 units of housing, they have one door going to the hallway. But in fire code, you need two means of egress. So we weren't able to go down the gardens of the terraces. So we were kind of stuck because the fire marshal said you can't build the building. And then we were like, well, what if we build a gate between the neighbors, and the gate can be opened so that if there's a fire in my unit and I can't go out the door, I can open the gate to my neighbor and go out their door. And two things happened. The fire marshal was stuck because he told us if we could figure out two ways of egress, he would say yes to the project, and we did. But we also created a new social dimension of, before there was a wall between the neighbors, now there was a gate that could swing both ways. And suddenly the neighbors started having like parties and inviting each other. And then the gates would open up between 4 or 5 neighbors, and they would have like a row party. And that gate suddenly opened up a whole new world because of the regulations. So it's all about how you actually look at regulations, not as something stopping your creativity, but just accelerating it or enticing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, excellent. Thanks for that. And we need those parties these days. We can't wait until the COVID era is over to have those parties. Thank you also, Professor Kwon Jung-woo, for showing the project while Kai is talking. Do you want to have do you have a question or comment for us?
Do I?
No. I was asking one of our participants. He's actually holding up the images of your work while others are asking. So it's actually very helpful. We have a few more questions actually from our YouTube audience. There's a lot of people online and a lot of questions, but unfortunately I can't take all of them. And I'm sorry, I'm not taking them in any kind of order. They're just what's coming up. We have Harold Baker. I don't know where Harold Baker is hailing from, but he asks this very succinct question. Kai, do you see your architecture or your urban design as your greatest form givers? This could be a trick question.
I'm partial personally to the scale of urban, and I find the whole aspect of the kind of political speed with which urban design happens very, very, I find it very exciting, and that you have to sometimes move thousands of people into a certain path and collectively get consensus. I would say, however, that we see, designing a lamp for Artemide and thinking about, light, and, everyone has done a reflected ceiling plan and understands that light is often so, you have so few things to choose from. And we've never had a certain freedom to just twist and morph tubes the way that we would like to. And that was the challenge. And we came up with a product for Artemide that basically looked at the lamp and really has created a total freedom of writing with light. And to me, that is what Big is about. It's from a product to the planet, thinking of, it's kind of every scale offers us equal amounts of of pleasure.
Great. Well, thank you. But it was very I thought you were going to answer that way in terms of being cross-disciplinary and cross-scalar. But then when you first answered, you talked about the urban scale. And so that's actually very telling in a way. I think the solutions, of course, they reverberate across scales, but the urban scale projects like the Big U, they can affect more people and they can actually work across social divides. So it's very interesting that you started off on talking about the urban scale.
Also equity, because equity is such a is such an important topic. You know, when you, I think, are designing a building, you're touching dozens or hundreds of people. When you do things in the city, you are really imprinting a very large part of society. And I think, you know, what we actually build represents us and represents society's values. So the Big U is a big step because New York, both the mayor and the governor before Sandy were climate deniers and climate change deniers. And that one event had such a reverberation and changed, I would say, the very soul of how New York City approaches climate issues now.
Yes, so it actually had an impact on an individual scale, someone that's involved in the making of the city, fortunately, but also at the scale of the community. So yeah, I think that's great. By the way, Harold Baker is saying he's hailing from Indianapolis. He's an architect from Indianapolis, Indiana, USA. So this is great to have someone from the US joining us today while we're in Seoul and you're in New York. We have another question from Y. Chung Wong. And he asks, Kai-Uwe, can you share your thoughts and ideas on how COVID-19 has impacted on the way we live and our work and our environment? And we were talking about that a little bit and
yeah,
before we started.
So I honestly feel this is a historic moment in our lifetimes. And I say this because I remember my grandmother, who lived in Europe, speaking about the flu in a way that was kind of like the biggest flu of her life, or flu as almost equal to one of the world wars. And what she meant was the Spanish flu, of course, this period of time in 1918 to 1920, which she lived through, where everything kind of just stopped for 2 years. And you know, it's been 100 years for the West. I know that in Asia you have had a series of pandemics and epidemics over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. I think that's also why you're much better. You're performing better as a society for all of those kind of false starts. And you know, but for America and for Western Europe, it has been 100 years really since anything like this has happened. And it is giving us a sense that we are all connected. It is giving us a sense that we can actually, if we put our minds to it, think holistically about a topic or something, and make the necessary changes. So I felt that pre-COVID, when you thought of the climate issues that are affecting us, I would never have actually considered the world working together or working towards a common goal that I do think is possible in a post-COVID world. And that is some little bit of positivity to take out of this very dour and traumatic period that we're living in.
And could you say a little bit about the way your office is operating actually right now?
Yeah, so you know, we have 4 main offices. I think John mentioned all of them, and then we have about 5 project offices around the world. So we actually have 9 places where we have Bigsters working, and it's very different in all of these locations. A couple of them are in Tokyo, 2 of them are in Taipei, 1 is in Shenzhen, and then of course Barcelona, London, New York, and Copenhagen. And you know, it's again very societal. It's very value driven. Some places have been able to reopen and have completely normal work life without masks. New York has not been working from the office, primarily from home. Many of the New York staff have also moved to other parts of the US. We hope to bring everyone back, by the next year, but we're also realizing that this is a moving kind of target, and that we have to be very respectful of each other, and also the kind of working conditions that everyone is working in. So we are, we have very different approaches in all of the offices.
And is it working to be working on, specifically in New York, to be working all from home? Is it, how is the teamwork?
Yeah, so there's probably about 30 people or so out of the 250 that are going in, because we have models that need to be built or some coordination meetings that happen. But for the most part, the people that are working from home, I do feel that it is working and the technology is there to support it. I think that, we also have clients like Google that are very tech savvy, and they also have been able to assist us and help us with different programs and different ways of thinking about working from home. I think a lot of tech companies are moving to work from home completely after this event. And I think that it's been really resourcefulness on the behalf of every single person to find the way of working together. But it's when you work from home, there's also suddenly a blurring of what is work and what is home that you really have to be cognizant of. So we really also hope to find the balance for everyone.
That's right. It's an unprecedented time, and it's an experiment. And I'm glad you guys are doing so well. And hopefully you can share after this is all over what worked and what didn't work. Because this is actually good for preparing not only for the next event, but also looking more positively how to collaborate. Maybe there's a flip side where this actually has opened up new ways to collaborate. We have time for one more question from our SNU audience, if any of the students have any questions. And if not, I'll take one more question from YouTube. Is there any student online? Pyo Guyon, I see you're online. Do you have a question?
Not really. Actually, but I don't have any question, but I just felt very interested when you have mentioned so many future-seeing projects about some environmental problems, or I heard somewhere the word Anthropocene.
Yes.
Which implies that environment is now being exploited by mankind, and according to the idea of Anthropocene, I have seen so many architecture projects which are very pessimistic and anarchist, something like that. And among those projects, I found it very interesting on your projects, because you are still ambitious, and I see that you think that it is solvable, and we have very alternative ways to deal with those, and that was what I really enjoyed on your presentation. Thank you very much for your very nice lecture. Thank you.
Yes. By the way, I now remember the architect that I wanted to say. His name is Swoo Gyeon Kim. Does he
Kim
ring a bell?
Soo-gun, yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a Korean architect that I really admired when I was a student, and also learning of his work afterwards. I find that there are a lot of forms that he was actually also looking at and contemplating that are very much similar to Big's work.
Well, that's an amazing way to close this gap between us. I can actually feel like you're in Seoul right now when you start mentioning Kim Soo-gun, because he's an iconic, of course, architect here, and all the students are looking at him. But as a student, you are looking at him as well. So we've closed the gap here.
Yes,
I can feel the satellite connecting us. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kai. This was such a privilege to have you, and for us to just really get a personal insight into how the office works, and also just really be able to talk to you face to face like this. It's been great. We know how busy you are, and it's not busy in the fact that you're too busy for us, but it's busy because you're doing a lot of work, and a lot of great work. And so I know this is a commitment for you to make time for us. So we really appreciate it.
John, we're brothers from other mothers. We will always be connected for life, and it's a real honor to have your friendship. I've always been inspired by your work. I loved meeting all the students in our office last year, and I look forward to a very close connection with the university.
Well, excellent. We look forward to having you, and we'll keep on talking. This is just the beginning, not the end.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you, all the listeners on our university Zoom and also on YouTube Live. We also have another lecture coming up, Felipe Correa. He's actually the chair of the program at University of Virginia on December 4th. I don't know if you know him, Kai. Felipe Correa. Yes, he was the chair of the urban design department at Harvard, and then now he's leading University of Virginia. Maybe I can rope you in for the round table afterwards, December 4th. You have time. I'll try.
You bet.
I'll ask.
See you. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.